maybe made it, as always. So, hello everybody who's joining right now. Let me see if I can get a chat up or something. Because as always, with all the live streams, it always takes me like half an hour just to get it all set up. So, here we finally have it. Let me see if I can put everything up. Oh my goodness, I look so sunburnt in this. I'm seeing myself now and I hadn't realized how badly sunburnt I am. But yeah. So there's not a particular topic that I wanted to talk about today. It's just that I haven't been on YouTube for so long. Like seriously, it must be something like I don't know, a month maybe now, because I've been so busy with other work. Um, so I thought, I don't know, we could catch up a little here by chatting. It's easier. Hi Debbie. Ah, ciao Manuel. Ciao, grazie per esserti unito. Spero che hai mangiato la pasta. Hi, Sydney. Ah, I can even see you here because now I'm closer, so I don't need my glasses. Otherwise, I usually can't read anything. Anyway, thank you everybody for joining. I thought we could, I don't know, catch up with everything. Yesterday, I rewatched Minari again. If we want to talk about anything A24, as you know, that's always fine for me. The Oscars happened. I watched a lot of films. A lot happened since the last time we spoke. I think the last time we spoke was at the beginning of April, something like that, like a month ago. So yeah, I'm planning on getting back into creating more content. I just need to organize a few things. And again, yeah, I didn't realize I look so sunburned. Like here, it's fine, but then I look into my computer and I look like Mr. Krabs or something. Anyway, so if there is anything you'd like to chat about, anything what you've been watching recently, as I said yesterday, I rewatched Minari. I'd already seen it, and now that cinemas have opened in Italy, I rewatched it in Italian. It wasn't the same thing just because in the original version, I'll chat a bit about Minari just in the meanwhile while we wait for more people to join. In the original Minari version, it's basically the story of this. To give you some more context to everybody who hasn't seen it yet, it's basically the story of this Korean family who move to America to Arkansas during the 80s. And the number of Koreans in the United States in the 80s was not the amount of Koreans there are now, especially in more rural areas of states like Arkansas. And so this family moves there. And the dad's plans are to have this farm on which they grow Korean produce. Uh, but you know the expectations and of the American dream are not what he actually meets. And in the original version, basically half of the film is spoken in Korean and the other half is spoken in English with a strong Korean accent, except for the kids. The two kids basically speak perfect English, so it's all about them being considered more American than Korean, but the parents insisting they're Korean. And then the grandma comes over and she tries to bring more of the Korean aspect of the upbringing, whatever. Instead, in the Italian version, it's all completely dubbed in Italian, and it's not even like a broken. Sometimes when things are dubbed in Italian, they will still keep like the broken accent, if you see what I mean. They will try to make them sound like the who dubs them will try to give them that kind of accent. Instead, it wasn't. It was totally just regular, average Italian. So that was something that I felt was lacking because how they speak in the original movie is a big part of the story. But still a great movie. I loved rewatching it. I love the story. Absolutely recommended if you haven't seen it yet. Have you watched Meet Joe Black? Brumman. Yes, I have, but years and years and years ago on TV. Um, it's with Brad Pitt. I don't know how much I can say because I don't know when the big thing. Really can't remember when the big thing of the movie is revealed in it. Um, So yeah, I really can't remember at what point there's the big spoiler, so I'm not going to speak too much about it. But yes, I have seen it years and years and years ago. What do you think about Maze Runner? They were wearing surgery masks, as in the films, the older ones. Yeah, I've seen them. I actually, the reason I rewatched them just a while ago, I think I was posting them on Instagram, is because I have a teenage brother who's into that coming of age movies, the kind of like Hunger Games style films we all watched when we were teenagers, and he's only discovering them now. So I'd seen them back at the time, like I don't know when was it, like 2014 or something that they came out, and I rewatched like the first and the second one, I think, with him. Um, and they're good. They're good movies. At least the first one, I can't really remember what happens as the story goes on. Um, but the premise to the story is that these guys suddenly wake up out of nowhere, and they find themselves in this walled environment, this walled garden. Um, and they can't go out. And if they try to go out to these walls, which open at regular intervals throughout the day, they are attacked by creatures. There's all sorts of dangerous stuff if they try to get out. So they have to figure out why they're there, who put them there, what's the meaning of all of this. Um, and then it goes on and on and on. Obviously, like I don't know what, 3 or 4 films and books. I haven't. I don't think I ever followed all the way to the end, but I did rewatch the first and second one only recently because he was um he was watching them on. My brother was watching them on TV, but I don't know why about the surgery masks. Maybe I missed something. Debbie, what movies have you watched so far in 2021? A lot. I watched a lot of films, not as many as I watched in 2020 because in 2020 Italy spent most of 2020 in a full lockdown. So we couldn't do anything, nothing, absolutely nothing. We are only now, like, we had a brief moment of freedom last summer, then we went back again, and we only now able to kind of go out, kind of do some things now. So in 2020, I watched way too many films than I should have. I counted them. I actually have a list. Um, Let me see if I can have it, if I still have it somewhere here, if I haven't deleted it, because I'd like analyzed what I'd watched and like the percentage of movies and the percentage of series and the genres and the countries. I'd done this really cool thing because I'd got to the point that it was, oh, I don't think I have it anymore. It was 500. Like the number was just under 500 films and series in one year. And what frightens me is not the film so much, because if you think of it, that's only um, 2 films a day, which most of like people who are really like obsessed with films would watch like maybe one a day. So understandably, in the lockdown, I was spending more time. I'd watch at least 2 a day. Um, and it isn't, because it's not even 500. So let's say one and a half or something like that a day. The thing that frightened me at the end of all of this was the series, because series take so much time. Like if you're watching a 12 episode series, like a 1 hour each 12 episode series, that's a lot of time. That's 12 hours of your time. That's not an hour and a half of a comedy. Um, and I'd watched quite a few of them. It's so annoying that I don't have that anymore. Oh no, maybe I do have it on my hard drive. Just a second. Because if I can pull that up, that has some really interesting aspects. Instead, in 2021, to come back to your question, I didn't actually watch, I watched quite a few of them. What I'd suggest is I have these monthly videos. In fact, I had to make my what I watched in April one videos on my channel where I basically speak every month. I speak about what I watched the previous month, series, films, documentaries, everything. So I give a little brief review of that. Let me see if I can pull this up somewhere. I'd called it 500 or something. Let's see. No, I think I deleted it when I was like cleaning up something the other day. Of course I would have. Yeah, no. Deleted everything completely. But anyway, I'd done all this thing about the films I'd watched in the countries, and it was interesting. Like even the genres, I had like all the horrors and the comedies, and what I'd realized was the amount of comedies I had watched. I don't usually, I like comedies, I like all genres, but I'm not the kind of person who I would say is an expert on comedy or a person who watches a lot of comedy. And at the end of the year, when I compiled this list, I noticed how many comedies I'd watched, something which was completely unexpected. And I think it might have to do with the fact that we were all sort of looking for something to cheer us up, if that makes any sense. I don't know if you noticed this, that um, on TV, like here in Italy, as soon as we all went into lockdown, they were showing all the comedies because people, wanted something cheerful to watch because it was just the news all day long about COVID and people were fed up with that and they couldn't do anything else because they had to stay at home. So on TV every evening there were like the big Italian famous comedies. Um, and it must have happened subconsciously. I ended up watching a ton of comedies. Um, which was an interesting topic, and I think the first was drama, but just because drama kind of includes a lot of different things. Drama is just a genre when you don't really know what to give it. It's like just I don't know if that makes any sense. Like when it's a horror or thriller. Drama is just like everything else basically. So that was the first category. Then we had comedies, horror. There was a lot of horror. Comedies, horror, like some anime. Uh, Very few romantic films. There were like a couple. Yeah, so I wish I still had that, but unfortunately I don't. But yeah, that was a an interesting analysis. So, hi Debbie, what's up? Hello from America. Hi Tyler. Hello from Italy. Please watch Super 30 Bollywood from Niraj. Thank you for the suggestion. The last Indian film I watched, but I still have to finish it. I'm like halfway through. And I don't know if I'm going to remember the name. I don't know why I completely blanked out on that. It's an somebody will know this in the chat. It's an Indian movie about a superhero, but he like the beginning of the movie. I because I haven't got I'm only like not even halfway into it, so it opens with uh, everybody's phones stop working and they're sort of taken away from them all around the world, right? And there used to be this brilliant scientist who then disappeared for a while, and people were questioning whether, is this scientist a good scientist or is he like the evil scientist who goes against human life, whatever. Um, but it's apparently from the trailer, it's supposed to be like a sort of superhero movie and 2.0 there. I knew people would know this in the comments. And I found it on Prime Video. And what I thought was curious about it is that a superhero movie is not something you would associate with Indian films, if you see what I mean. Like that's what I'm always trying to prove is that a lot of us have some very oh, the movie sucks. Okay, I don't know if should I go on and keep on watching it. I don't know. I just left it there because I was watching it like was it last week or the week before, and then we had a family dinner, so I sort of left it. Then I still have to pick it up again. Um, but but yeah, I don't know. Just the thing is, I'm always trying to tell people that you shouldn't associate a country with only a certain type of film. For example, I watched what did I watch recently? I watched Al Rafiki, which is a Kenyan movie. Now, if I said a Kenyan movie, people would imagine something, I don't know, just something of a very low quality because that's just what I think my earrings are really clicking onto the AirPods. So I'm going to take these off. But I think a lot of people would just associate like African films with something of a very low quality production. And then you get Rafiki, which is probably one of the most aesthetically pleasing movies I've watched of 2021, with an interesting storyline. Like, literally, I always say if you took Kenyan out of the title and you just set it in Los Angeles instead of setting it in a city in Kenya, that would have millions more. I don't know if millions, but hundreds of thousands of more views. Um, just because it's Kenyan, people would just not won't watch it. And this is the thing about Indian movies, people would just associate them with the old classic Bollywood movies and not with this all new genre. Now, apparently this 2.0 is a really bad movie, but it proves that there are different, different genres out there. Hello, Debbie. Oh no, I missed the comments. Have you seen The Father yet? I thought the film was brilliant. One of the best films of the year for me. Yes, I have. I cried a lot. I somebody close to me wanted to watch it, and they asked me to rewatch, and I don't think I'm mentally prepared to rewatch it. And the thing about The Father is, it all there was not this scandal, but Anthony Hopkins won the Oscar for Best Actor for The Father, right? Because I haven't talked about the Oscars yet, so I'm going to quickly mention some thoughts about them. So the premise of the Oscars, one of the nominees was Chadwick Boseman, right? And he was nominated for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And before when he was Chadwick Boseman died not too long ago. He was very young and he died just after doing Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. He was ill while filming Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. He was ill while like terminally ill while filming all his last films. He didn't tell anybody. He just went forward with it. Only those very close to him and his family knew this. And then he suddenly passed away, right? So this was his last performance ever. And people started, coming up with the usual things like, oh, is he nominated because he passed away, or is he nominated because he was a great actor? He was nominated because he was a great actor. That performance was wonderful. So already there was all this discussion going on around, right? And then a lot of people came up with a thing of um, him being nominated only because he's black. So he was black and dead, right? So people had to talk about that. They didn't consider the fact that he was just actually a good actor doing a great performance. So the Oscar night came, and they changed the whole setup of the ceremony. So we all know that the Oscar, the audience that's been watching the Oscars has been going down and down and down every year because people just don't. I don't know. They don't find it interest anymore. They think it's a bit detached from reality. It's become way too political. Anyway, for a series of reasons, people haven't been following the Oscars anymore. So apparently, somebody on the Oscars program board decided to switch the categories and put not Chadwick, but the best actor category for last. And they obviously did this because in a year like 2020, in which basically not that many interesting films were released, they knew they had to like grasp onto the one thing everybody was going to follow, right? Which was Chadwick Boseman possibly being the winner. And I think we all kind of expected him to win, and then he didn't. And then in the end, Anthony Hopkins won for The Father. Also a great performance. Actually, a lot of people were torn, in their predictions, say, will it be Chadwick Boseman? Will it be The Father? In my opinion, I predicted that he was going to win also because it was sort of like it was a great performance and it was his last performance. So maybe the Academy would have kept into consideration the fact that this was like the last chance they had to honor him, right? Um, but all that said apart, this created a huge discussion because whether Chadwick Boseman would have won, or if he won or if he didn't win, I don't know if I'm saying this correctly. In any case, they decided to just use the hype around this dead guy to get more people watching, which everybody thought was a very sick fact, and it backfired against them. I think they were hoping that he would actually win and they would end the evening on this wonderful memory of his, but he didn't win, so it backfired even more against them. And then people came up with the fact that they didn't even switch it for Heath Ledger. They didn't switch the whole ceremony when Heath Ledger won, and people still watched to the end. They didn't switch off. Like, oh right, okay, Heath Ledger won. Okay, let's click off. So I don't know. Every year the Oscars have to come up with something controversial. So anyway, oh, and then there was all the thing. This is connected again to Minari because people are so confused at the moment because let's get into like the politically correct thing because this has been a big topic in Italy at the moment now. And then I'll get back to the comments. It's just because I have so much to talk about and I haven't been talking to anybody about it. So let me overload you with all this information. So, politically correct. Italy has never been particularly interested in being politically correct. If you come to Italy, if you hear Italians speaking, they don't care. They get offended if you have pizza on pineapple, sorry, pineapple on pizza, but they won't get offended for a lot of other things. It's there's not this big cancel culture here. There's not the getting offended. They often say a lot of very offensive things, but with a fun sense, if you see what I mean. Anyway, now they're getting more. They're following more the trend of America. I think I am. I just basically what happened is in this moment, I'm doing this live stream on my iPhone, and this message came up that my iPhone was overheated and needed to cool down. I've never seen that in my life. I've literally never seen that. But yeah, here we are back down. Apparently, it cooled down. I have no idea. But I don't know why I can't get the chat box back up. So I might have to read them from here. But anyway, before my iPhone decides to explode, let me feel it. It's not even that hot. Like this has never happened. I've literally never seen that happen in all my life. I have no idea. Anyway, getting back to Italy, I wonder if I can pull up the chat here. Ah, yeah, I think maybe I can see everybody now. Everybody's. Anyway, so what happened? Italy and being politically correct, right? So and now they're. I need to get my string of thoughts back. So, um, what was it? I really can't remember. Oh yeah, yeah, the Oscars. So Italy is starting to be even more politically correct, like trying to be politically correct, but in all the wrong ways. They'll get angry about some things without realizing that we have much bigger problems in Italy that would have to be fixed. So people in general have started to get confused because organizations like the Oscars used to, the Oscars started even before Hitler was in power. Okay, let's just give a little bit of background. So obviously, the percentage of nominees and winners over the year is hugely white male, just because during the 50s and 60s, a lot of people didn't have rights, so they certainly weren't being nominated and winning Oscars. So, what organizations like the Academy are trying to do now is giving space to people and voices that were never heard before, which is right in the concept of it. It's right to allow more and more people, their space to speak, their space to show their art. The problem is that some people in that environment have decided to do this by, I just need to include everybody possible, because otherwise, not because I think that this person deserves their space, but because that's just what I need to do. Otherwise, I'm considered the black sheep of the business, and this backfired on them because now, when there's a good actor or good director, nobody knows whether they're being awarded because they deserve it or because, like, us film lovers know it, obviously, but the main general audience is a bit confused because, for example, Stephen Young, the actor, the protagonist of Minari, he did a great performance, and he's Korean American, and a lot of people started saying, "Oh, but he's only included because he's Asian," and no, he isn't. He's included because he's a great actor. Same for Chadwick Boseman. People were starting to question whether he was actually nominated because he was black or because he did a great performance. So see how this backfired against people because they can't understand anymore. They don't know what to do because for a few years there's been this thing of people trying to include as much as possible and coming up with stupid ideas like doing the ghost sure totally female Ghostbusters. We didn't need that. and Natalie Portman, when that thing happened at the Oscars, when um, I think it was the 2018 Oscars referring to 2017, and when they had to, I can't remember if it was best director. Yeah, I think it was the best director category or best film or best director. I'm not sure. So Natalie Portman was announcing the nominees in and the winners, and she said, "And now for the all male nominees." Why did you have to say that? Like, we know they're all males and it's not their fault. It's not their fault. So obviously they were sort of like, there was this cringe moment of them clapping, not knowing if they were supposed to clap them for themselves or not. And I was like Christopher Nolan, like, should I clap for myself? Should I not clap? Oh, now I'm winning. Not Nolan. I can't remember who won that year. Should I accept my award with pride, even if I'm a male? So there's a lot of confusion. So when Chloe Zhao that won this year for Nomadland, people started saying, "Oh, but they only made her win because she's an Asian woman." No, she won because she's a great director. So I don't know. The Oscars created all this confusion, and they try to be, hip and woke and everything, and then they go and do stupid stuff like putting the best actor category at the end, n- like taking advantage of dead black Chadwick Boseman, if you see what I mean. So I don't know. It's just a total nonsense, and the problem was in Italy we were still safe from being politically correct just for the sake of it and not because you actually want to bring some good in the world. But now it looks like some people even here. Um, I know that there's been a scandal with two comedians here, Pio and Amedeo, but I haven't followed everything into that. I know that they said something about saying the N word, but saying it within context, something I haven't seen. I've just heard that there's been, this is literally like just in the last days, people have been talking about it. They said if you say a word in a context, no, not even the N word. I think it was if whatever you say has a if it has a context to it, then it's different. I don't know. I'd have to watch all of that to for it to make more sense. But anyway, it's been a wider part of of a discussion here in Italy. So all of that saying about the Oscars. Let me see, because I don't know. Basically, what happened before when my phone stopped is that I have a really crappy internet connection. So I'd set up my phone because it's the only way I can get some decent speed connection. Set up my phone, and but I've got my computer here so I can read the chat better because it just chatbot doesn't always appear up here, and it comes up tiny. Open it up, and the Wi-Fi is going incredibly slow, so I'd have no idea what's going on. Absolutely no idea. And then my phone decided to overheat and stop working. So that happened too. Never happened before. It had to obviously happen during the live stream. I don't know, I'm going to try and see if I can pull it up again and see if I can actually follow your comments. Um, yeah, I think I can. Maybe I can actually pull up the comments now. Ah, here you are. Yeah, I can actually. So let's see what I'd lost before everything went to ruins with my thing. Oh, because I was at the father. Yes, I have watched the father. That was the answer to all of that. Why in Matrix 1999 the Neo's passport ran out on 9/11 2001? Is it true? Is it like that? That's weird if it is, but oggi niente carbonara, mi sto dando alla cucina vegana. Bene. By the way, ho un nuovo film da consigliarti, The Secret of Kells. Da scrivere. I need to write it down. As always, I have all my notes of all the films, and now I don't need to screenshot them anymore because I have my Letterbox account, which Letterboxd. Um, I used to have this a while back, and I never used to use it, but now I found it. I found it again, and there was still like Birds of Prey, and I don't know if there was still Dunkirk or something or Tenet in it that I still had to watch, so I had to update that. The only thing about Letterbox is that you have to like rate everything. Like I kind of wanted it to keep it just as a watch list, and then I could, because what I used to do, I always used to screenshot films because they would just pop up on like Instagram, like a cool photo or Tumblr, and I used to screenshot them. And I had my phone full. It was like 300 screenshots at one point. And so I slowly moved them all over to Letterbox, and I thought I could just like take them off, which you can. But the point of it is that you should review them and rate them. So I should get into that because I know a lot of you want to, you want to follow me there, and a few of you do follow me there to see what I'm thinking about the movies as I watch them, because it's nice because you watch a film and then you just go on and you write a quick, your quick thoughts about them. But anyway, Manuel, did you become vegan or were you vegan back in the past? I was vegan for 1 year, and I came out of my vegan phase um, just after the lockdown last year. I don't want to talk about veganism, but I just thought it was an interesting fact because I'd wanted to be vegan for a very, very long time. And I tried, and it would only last like a few days and blah, blah, blah. And then cold turkey, I decided to do this the winter before the lockdown, basically. And I went on for a whole year. And then I realized I was eating really unhealthily. I was eating more unhealthily for my thought. It's not vegan. The vegan diet is really healthy, but I was ending up eating like a lot of crackers and a lot of like sweet stuff and all of that. Um, and so I decided to go back to eating normal food just because in the end I was eating unhealthily. But in the long run, I would like to revert back to that. And I wasn't, I really wasn't one of those annoying people who were like, you should become vegan. But I found it interesting. You just discover, because I don't want to talk about this, but I don't have the best relationship with food. And I realized over the years that I hadn't been enjoying food. I didn't have any I couldn't, like anything I used to eat would just taste, I couldn't feel the quality of stuff, which here in Italy is a big thing, obviously. Like, I remember we all went out to eat a burger. This was at Gardaland, which is a theme park here in the north of Italy. And it's like the biggest one in Italy or Europe or whatever, I don't know. And we ate at a burger place in there. And my friends were all saying this burger is like the worst thing I've ever eaten. It's absolutely disgusting. And I was eating it, I was thinking, it just tastes like burger. Like I couldn't taste the difference in anything I ate. Everything just tasted the same. And I'd enjoy having like plain white bread with ham, just plain ham. Like I didn't have any refined taste buds because I was just eating so badly. Like I just anything sweet together with how do you sort of say it, savory food, nothing. It was a total mess. And when I started to get into eating vegan, I started to discover uh, chickpeas and lentils, and you could make soups and with different herbs and spices, and there was all like this variety of things, and I was actually starting to taste different things. And then luckily, I have a boyfriend who cooks very well, and he cooks different things, and I've started to try things. I hadn't even tried a lot of foods. I would literally just eat the same standard things. Um, and now I feel like I've gotten into trying, different new things, because before I'd go to the pizza place and I would order the same four boring things, and I'd come home and I'd make butter noodles or whatever. Instead, now I have a more ample taste buds, if that makes any sense. All of this, I know none of you care about this. I can talk to somebody about it. In the future, I would like to get back into, eating less meat, because I'm not a huge fan of meat in general. And also, I've got into more like Oriental food, which is a very vague term, but I've started eating more Indian food because we've discovered like some places close to home um, where they serve Indian food, and that might sound like a stupid thing, but in Italy, if you live in a small town, you don't get the variety of foreign foods as in bigger towns. Already in the bigger towns, there's not everything. Then you'd have to be in Milan to have everything, like literally in the center of Milan, because even outside, there's not that much. But if you live in a smaller town, um, you don't get that variety. So when you find an Indian restaurant or a Chinese restaurant, it's like the big thing where everybody goes. And anyway, all of this to say is that in those types of, well, no, not in the Chinese, but in the Indian cuisine. Meat isn't actually such a huge part. I can't remember what the statistics are. I know there's a few Indians in the chat if you want to confirm this, but I read that like 70 or 75% of the Indian population is vegetarian. So obviously meat is not that huge of a component in their diet. So a lot of the dishes um, are different. Anyway, getting back to, to our films, one of my favorites, Night Train to Lisbon. Hello from a Portuguese in Warsaw. Now that's an interesting combination. Well, speaking of Warsaw, I saw Cold War, Zimna Wojna, and I absolutely loved it. Is Cold War, is it the one? I think I might have seen this, but I don't want to say. I think I watched this last year. Oh no, sorry. Cold War was the one that was at the Oscars. Why am I thinking of? I'm thinking of what was the film about the guy who is it's a bit like the Queen's Gambit but set in Russia. And the guy is like a spy. He's like an American spy who has to play chess, but he's like progressively drunker and drunker. I can't remember how that was called. Now that was a Polish film, and that was released on Netflix like last year. I don't know why I thought of that. Are you going to see the David Di Donatello 2021 award live? No, maybe a summary. Big spoiler alert. I've never ever watched the David Di Donatello. The David Di Donatello are like the Italian Oscars, and I never watched them because I'm not that big into Italian cinema. Unfortunately, that's one of my flaws. Um, um, I just saw the comment that came up. Sorry, because I'm not watching them half in. The Coldest Game, that was, yeah, maybe I thought Cold War, Coldest Game was the film of the guy who plays chess. Um, so yeah, one of my big flaws is that I'm not that into Italian cinema. So when these awards come around, I don't know what they're even talking about. I'm very guilty of that, unfortunately. What do you like to cook? Well, now my taste buds a little more refined. As I was saying earlier. Um, I like to cook a bit everything really. One of the things people close to me say I'm good at is making cakes. I don't know why. They're just I don't know. I just maybe they're easy to make. Uh, but yeah, I don't know if there's something specifically that I enjoy making. Um, but yes, I think I'm quite good at making cakes. You should create a list of every movie you watch with your rating out of 10 and genre. So yeah, Letterbox is probably going to help with that because as I watch the films, you should rate them and tick them as watched. I do review them in my monthly videos, but I've never given a 1 out of 10, but I should get into that. And the reason why I never give a 1 out of 10 is that my opinion could change on a movie. For example, I watched years back, I don't know if those who have been following for a long time might remember that in my second year of YouTube, so not when I just started, but after a while, I had a year in which I was a total bitch about films. I'd got into this phase of criticizing everything. I was this hipster who would complain about everything. I would say how, if anything that wasn't artsy was just rubbish. And so I got angry with Deadpool because Deadpool came out at the time and I said it was absolute rubbish. There's a very annoying review that I did back at the time. I don't know if I took that down or if it's still there, whatever. Um, and I complained about it a lot. And back at the time, I would have given it like a 4 out of 10 or something because I was so annoying. But now I would probably give it a much higher rating because, my perspective has changed on things and I appreciate certain different aspects of it. So I was terrified over the course of years of putting numbers because it would just, I don't know, I couldn't put a number on things. In Back at the time when I watched Interstellar for the first time, I would have given it a 10 out of 10. Now, sometimes I want to punch my Interstellar poster right there because I think of 2001: A Space Odyssey and all the things that I've learned over the course of years. So, I think Letterbox would be a good way of me getting into, you know, watching, giving more well thought out votes to votes to the films. I recently watched a Studio Ghibli movie I didn't know about. Do you like those? I do. Please share with us which one it was. We need to know. What do you think of Sound of Metal? Sound of Metal was a great film. And a little background to this. So when I lived in America for a while, about a year, and while I was there, this is all how I got to this thing. There is a guy, he was a YouTuber, or I can't even remember what he was doing back at the time. I think I discovered him from iDubbbz, maybe. No, not I mean, I know who iDubbbz is, but this guy, I think I discovered him, I think it might have been through iDubbbz. He's called it's spelled Cyr, Sir, Sire. I'm not sure how it is. Just this random guy. Anyway, he posted a video on his Instagram in which it was like a funny sketch of him turning up in a bar, and then in the bar he'd say, "I think I murdered somebody upstairs," and then he'd take out this object, and everybody thought it was a knife, and instead it was a comb. Anyway, in that moment there, then the thing freezes and the music. There's this song going on, and it's a song by a band called Neanderthal, like as in Neanderthal, as in the primitive, but spelt with an O. So I went to listen to this song, and everybody in the comments was obviously, "I'm here from Sire, I'm here from him." I don't even know how you pronounce his name. It's a very little known song. But in the music video is one of those few music videos on YouTube which also include sign language, which a lot of people say is very important because subtitles to a music video will not convey the the full spectrum of emotions uh, that a song conveys. What is it? A pounding moment in the song? Is it, what are you feeling? Is it an angry moment? And it says sign language can convey all of these things. And so instead of having the singer speaking, there's a whole music video, and there's this guy Paul Raci who is signing it, right? And now in Sound of Metal, Paul Raci the he is one of the protagonists, and he was actually, if I'm not mistaken, he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Sound of Metal. And that video and that song, which was called The Ride, I think it's the name of the song. Basically, I can't remember if it's The Ride or The Ride. It was a very important song for me while I was in the United States, just because I listened to it so much. I just loved it, and I just randomly found it from that video from a random guy connected, I think, to iDubbbz, and I would just listen to it over and over and over again. And I knew all the lyrics and everything. And I loved the fact that there was this guy doing the sign language in it, because I'm all about accessibility on YouTube and inclusivity. That's why I always put the subtitles where possible on my videos. And I was so surprised when I went to see Sound of Metal and there was suddenly this guy in it. Uh, all of that to say is, yes, I have watched Sound of Metal and I loved it. Sound of Metal is the story of a guy in his 30s. He's a drummer in a metal band, and he becomes deaf. Uh, Obviously, this would affect anybody who suddenly becomes deaf, but in his case, it was like negatively affect. Sorry, but in his case, it's even worse because obviously that means he can't continue his music career. Um, And so it tackles the topic of what we all give for granted. We're living our life not knowing how it is to live with a disability, and how we always give for granted that nothing will ever happen to us. Now, in the film, it's the example of being deaf. But if I were to go out, I always say this: if I could go out and I could be run over by a bus and I could end up paralyzed for the rest of my life, and I'm given for granted that I'm just here talking and doing everything normally, without thinking of how life is for people who live with a disability, and we all live in a world which doesn't include them. Everything in this world is made for abled people and doesn't include disabled people. Now, Italy is particularly famous for not being that inclusive. For example, it happened happened. I don't know. This is a random fun thing that happened was that when Italy finally got it set up like this website where you could book your vaccine, and only people that fell into very specific categories could access the website and put in their requests. So 80-year-old pluses and frontline workers, and one category was disabled people. But because the system obviously had to work all'italiana and it didn't work, they weren't able to access it, and a lot of people were cut out of that. Now I know this is that was just a random example, and it doesn't mean inclusivity. That was just a website they designed badly. But Italy with its old cobbled streets, and it's not like where every station you go to there's the perfect elevator taking you up to the station and everything. Anyway, this film, Sound of Metal, really makes you think about what you give for granted, because suddenly in his 30s, he has to deal with something he had never ever expected. And he realizes how life is for somebody who has a disability such as being deaf. How you're cut out from conversations, how people might consider you stupid because they think you can't understand them, or it could be that in that moment you can't understand them and they're just going to shout even louder because they think that's how you're going to understand it. I've seen this happen to people. There are people in my extended family who are deaf, and people in society will consider them like stupid. And when referring to them, they will not maybe refer to them directly, but they will speak to their partner as if they are not fully functioning adults. They will, questions and everything will always be through the partner. And in some cases, that makes sense. Obviously, if you're struggling to communicate, it might be helpful, to ask somebody close. Anyway, all of this is to say this is a wonderful film. Also, Riz Ahmed, he's a great actor. And so, yeah, I did watch that. I should keep everything shorter, but I always have so much to talk about. Gesture. Oh, I can't pronounce chest. Isn't that uh thank you or no, hello? I really don't know. I think I'm is chest hello or thank you in Polish, but I can't pronounce the Kim. Can't pronounce them. Ciao Debbie, ciao Matteo. Hi Debbie, hope it's all is well and you have been keeping busy. I've been keeping way too busy. That's why I haven't been on YouTube for quite a while. Chadwick was the favourite to win the Oscar for sure. He had won the second Golden Globe, so I don't blame them for thinking he was going to win. Yeah, as we were talking about before, I think just everybody expected Chadwick Boseman to win, but I don't think they should have switched up the whole Oscars for that. It turned out it backfired against them, especially in this cancel culture world. That how they're going to explain that? Oh, we did that because that would have got us more views. They can't really say that, can they? Excuse me, but where are you actually from? I am exactly 50 and 50, so 50% Italian and 50% English. I was born in the UK, that's why I have this accent, but I've lived nearly all my life in Italy. So if you saw me on the street and you heard me talking Italian, you wouldn't think for one second that I was British. Although my some people say that I don't. I don't know. I think this is true. Like when you hear me talk in English, you can hear that I'm not saying everything perfectly. I make a lot of mistakes. I stumble across my words. I say things in a more of an Italian way. So when I go to the UK, people can always sense there's something odd. They can't place their finger on it because I sound like this. And then instead, when I'm in Italy, everything's fine. But then sometimes some things, especially when I'm recording something, I will pronounce words. I will say things in a way some people might find odd. So I'm exactly 50 and 50. Um, but yeah, you're back. I am, yes. Hello from California. Hello. Why do I always go all the way down? Si sono riaperti i cinema in Italia? Sì, cinemas are open back in Italy. I went to the cinema yesterday to watch Minari. Finally, after ages. The fun thing was when the whole of Italy decided to reopen, the warning was of like about a week. Like every business in Italy was like, okay, next week you can all reopen again. And obviously, a lot of businesses hadn't programmed this. Everybody was expecting everything to be open in like after at least a month. So they hadn't hired people, they hadn't, programmed things ahead, and suddenly everything was open again. And cinemas were like, okay, what? Wait, like we don't even have films to show. So actually, like some of the biggest chains in Italy, like the Space Cinema, aren't actually open at the moment. From what I know, they're not actually open, and the only thing they've been posting on Facebook, because people have been asking them like, "Are you open?" They've only been saying, um, we need to check the programming of what we have available, and we need to check what new rules there are, but the rules are just the same ones of last year. You just book your place and then you have to sit far away from other people and wear your mask. That's it. Temperature measured, phone number, and you can't move from your place, yada yada. But I don't know why they're taking so long. I know they didn't have that much warning, but that was like a good 2 or 3 weeks ago. But yeah, now you can actually go to the cinema. I didn't even bother watching the Oscars this year. I don't feel like being lectured. I don't like to be lectured by my entertainment. Um, I I think just the Oscars have been losing more and more viewership because they are so detached. Like I always bring up that silly example of Helen Mirren and the jet ski thing. That was just, I don't know, it's just become this huge advertisement thing. It's become, it's always been about the gossip and what they're wearing. And if you look back at the photos from the 80s and 90s, it's all about, oh, look, they turned up at the red carpet wearing this. It's always been like that. But now it's all, more of, are you going to fit in, or are you going to actually talk about good movies, or are you going to become political? It's all very confused. And and then every year something has to happen. Every year there has to be the big thing that will make people go and watch it. This year was moving the best actor to the end, which wasn't Chadwick Boseman. There was the Moonlight and La La Land issue. So every year there's something different going on, just to get more and more views. I think that for how it went how the world of cinema went this year, in the end there was quite a good selection. I remember last year when we realized how bad the pandemic was going to be, we all thought like, shit, what are they going to show at the Oscars next year? Like Sonic and Bad Boys. Like in the end, there was quite a good selection. Just in a quick hyper, for sure I'm done with current Hollywood and anything new coming out. I'll enjoy watching my classic fades. Thank you otherwise for pointing out some of the absolute BS political crap in society right now. Well, thank you for following. I have also been trying to move away from Hollywood, not because I don't like, I mean, some of the best films ever have come out of Hollywood, because if you have money, you can buy the best actors, you can pay the best visual effects technicians, you can pay best directors and editors and cinematographers, you can pay for the best of the best of the best. So you're going to get the best film. That's what a lot of people said about Christopher Nolan, for how much I love him. Somebody, I think it was in a live chat actually, somebody said, I'd really like to watch a film made by Nolan with half of the budget. Like, would he be able to make the same thing? Is he actually a good director? Or does he just have the money? I personally think it's a mix of the both. He's a good director with good ideas, and he has the money. He's always said it, that he's very lucky because Warner Bros took him on, and they allowed him to have a lot of creative space, but with their money, which is not something that a lot of directors are fortunate enough to do. And so, yeah, so what happens is Hollywood can pay the best of the best, but sometimes you get fed up with seeing everything the same. Every single year you're going to get the same set of action films, you're going to get maybe a couple of different horror films, but then there will always be the same things. It's, just repetition. And since I've started like getting into other films from other cultures in general, there's not like one specifically, but I was mentioning Rafiki before. It's a Kenyan film, and in my opinion, it was better than some films that we've been watching this year on Netflix. Um, so yes, that's I've been trying to widen my perspective a little more. Okay, I'm Italian. This question is just a curiosity. Mum is British, right? So you always used to speak in English with her, because even for me, a British accent is so easy to hear. Yes, so growing up, my mum as this is still today, my mum would only speak to us in English and my dad would only speak to us in Italian. They would never cross over. My mum would never ever speak to me in Italian. She still does this today, where she will sometimes it's a bit annoying because she will talk to me in English even when there are other people who obviously don't understand, or she will try to switch when, it's obvious that where there's a group of people and she wouldn't just be rude and speak in English. And my dad has never, ever spoken to me in English. Like, I can't think of one instance when he's referred. He will speak in English to my cousins and my relatives and everything, with his very thick accent. But he never speaks to us in English. So growing up, I grew up exactly split in half. And when you're a kid, you make a lot of confusion. You will say sentences half in English and half in Italian. We would say verbs in Italian and then put the ed, the ed on the end to make it like the past tense. We would say words that were basically completely made up because our minds would be such a mixture, such a mix. But then growing up, the two things split, and you eventually have both English and Italian. But if you're British, you can hear that there's something odd with my English. And if you're Italian, you can sometimes hear that there's something odd in my Italian. I think the thing of my Italian is that it is not as clear. I don't know, it sounds sometimes as if I'm saying things in an odd way, even if they're grammatically correct. I don't know. This is what I've been told by other people. Fun fact, when I go to the UK, I don't know how to say a lot of regular sentences. Literally, if I now I'm going to struggle saying this to you, but I don't know how to say in English when you've got to put money in your phone. So now everybody does it just with their card, PayPal or credit card. You just get it taken, it just comes off of your credit card. But back in the day, you'd have to go down to the corner shop and say, "Hey, I don't know how to say this in English, but 10 euros on my phone." I know how to say it in Italian. I don't know how you say this in English. I don't know how you say that. I don't know what you have to say when you go and put petrol in your car. I don't know if I had to go to the hairdresser, I would have no idea how to, explain it, or I would, but it would sound really odd. So if I would have to go to put phone on my phone, I'd be like, "Hey, I need to put 10 euros on my phone." So the thing is, I say it with this accent, so I sound really weird because they're obviously like, "What?" Like, she should know how to say this. And I've been in once. I What I have here at home, I have, just those spare like pounds that the coins that just left over from previous trips. And when I go to the UK, I take them with me just so I can buy, odd things I don't want to pay with my card, just the odd pound or something. And I turned up in a shop and I can't tell the coins apart because I don't live in the UK. I look at those coins maybe once a year, so I don't know which is a five, which is a 20, what's so when I go in shops, I'm with my pile of coins and I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I really can't tell these coins apart. Please, I apologize." And they obviously are like, why is she behaving like this? Like, we can, like, what? So and then I actually picked up this pound and I paid with it, and she was like, the cashier was like, "I'm sorry, but those coins have been out, like they taken them away, they were like changed or whatever like 2 years ago, so this is not valid anymore." Anyway, so all of these fun situations happen, and I always feel like so embarrassed because I know exactly what everybody's saying and I can speak exactly, but I'm awful in normal circumstances, really awful of normal things. I sound like a child sometimes in England because I go out to shops and I sound like, "Oh, hi, may I please have one of this, please?" Because so yeah, that's the sorry if I'm doing this, but like my eye, I have something like sticking in my eye. So yeah, I'm exactly 50 and 50, but if you heard me in Italian, I'm I sound fine. If you hear me in English, then there's something a bit odd. In fact, when I first started my YouTube channel, a lot of the comments were making fun of my English. Like, "Oh, why do you say, oh," I used to say which instead of who when referring to people, and all these comments were people getting annoyed. But then, as they just, found out about me and found out about the channel, they were like, "Oh, okay, fine." People don't make fun of me anymore, luckily. Context matters. I think these are all old comments from before when we were speaking about when we're speaking about the political correctness. In fact, the next comment is, it's coming to in Italy too. I'm seeing at work the political correct nonsense. Yeah, I think being it's not. I don't even know if politically correct is just referring to the negative um, connotation of the word, but I think that yes, context matters, and you should be respectful of everybody. But I don't know if you heard what happened now, but people are saying that that scene of Sleeping Beauty was like a rape scene. Shouldn't say that word on YouTube. But in Sleeping Beauty, if I'm not getting my Disney movies mixed up, anyway, because I always get it mixed up with Snow White. But in Sleeping Beauty, basically, Sleeping Beauty is sleeping. She's in a sort of coma induced by the evil witch who gets her to prick her finger on like this needle thing, and she wants to take over the rain and everything. So Sleeping Beauty is sleeping in this coma. This prince comes, finds her, kisses her. She wakes up, and the story is all saved. Yay! Uh, 80 years later, or whatever, people have come up with the fact that he shouldn't have kissed her. If you find a woman sleeping in the forest, you shouldn't kiss her. The problem is, I think we all know that. I think we all know that. I think every man who isn't a rapist knows that. Uh, it was a film about that had like talking like women who could connect with birds and evil witches and uh, fairy godmothers and who bewitch cakes. Everything was weird and wrong about that film. So now, why do you think that that would be something out of? It's obviously a fairy tale, and it's obviously just a thing that won't happen in real life unless you're a bad person who does bad things to people. Um, so I think that we've got completely out of touch with all of this, and people are just complaining about everything. Uh, people complained about Ghostbusters because in the opening scene of the original Ghostbusters from the 80s, or is it late 70s? No, I think it's early 80s. Um, Basically, the Ghostbusters are called to a library where there's this ghost, and one of the questions they ask the librarian is if she was on her period, because it was a joke of when you're on your period, you're a bit crazy and you might have seen things. It was funny. It was funny. Well, people are now offended because they say um, it was like not very nice of them to assume that a woman would be crazy on her period. It was a joke. And you know what? A lot of these people who have all this rubbish are the first to insult men. These people that if you're a straight white man, you are the worst in the worst position right now because people just hate you and people feel entitled to say that. People will go online and they will say, all these woke Instagram feminists, I call them because they're only active on Instagram and not in real life. They say, "Oh, all men are trash." But imagine if you were saying that about women. All men are trash and um, all this rubbish without considering the actual problems. For example, take in the United States. Let's take because that's where a lot of these discussions came from. The United States have the kind of problem the of racism, which is absolutely unbelievable. People are just getting killed because of their race. They're getting, beat up in the street, and people are complaining about Snow White being kissed. Do you see the absolute bullshit in this? That's why I can't. It's okay if you're living in a perfect environment, and then you live in the perfect environment, right? And you're like, you know what? That that scene in that film, it could have been a bit different. Luckily, it was 80 years ago. Better not do that again today. They're not. They're not. They're ignoring all of these problems and they're really ignoring all of these problems and focusing on the stupidest things. Let's take up another great example, Robert Downey Jr. No, before we do Robert Downey Jr., let's talk about Aloha with what she called Emma Stone. So Aloha is a film set in Hawaii, and it's about these soldiers, these American soldiers in Hawaii. And anyway, one of the main characters is Emma Stone, and Emma Stone is a big part of her personality in the film is that she's supposed to be cringy because she's always saying, I'm so Hawaiian, and she will mention the percentage of how Hawaiian she is, and she will go on about the Hawaiian culture as if she knows everything about it, but she's obviously not. She's blonde, blue eyed. So part of her character is that you have to be annoyed with her. You have to be annoyed she's um because she's keeps on saying how Hawaiian she is, and she obviously isn't. Well, people said that film is racist because she is obviously not Hawaiian, which makes me ask the question, did people actually watch the film? I would rather, if you really had to complain about this, I would complain about why all the rest of the cast is completely white. Like, why get pick on Emma Stone? Which makes me think, do people actually watch a film with blindfolds and not reading anything into it more? Same thing happened with Robert Downey Jr. for Tropic Thunder. Now, Tropic Thunder is a film about everything bad that could happen in movies. It's it talks about it's basically about these filmmakers who want to make these films, but they do everything wrong that could happen, everything wrong that you could do. The actors are awful, the directors are awful, and in one of the basically in the film they make films, and in one of the films, Robert Downey Jr.'s character has a black face. So Robert Downey Jr. plays an actor who in the film is doing blackface, which we all know is wrong. The director knew it was wrong, Robert Downey Jr. knew it was wrong, we know it's wrong, but in the film, they were doing it because it was wrong. It was done on purpose to show all the bad things you could do in a movie. So then everybody in the movie knew that that movie was was bad, if you see what I mean. Well, people said that Robert Downey Jr.'s character was racist. Like they missed the point of the film. So I'm wondering whether all these people, first of all, if they actually watch the films, because there are plenty of racist movies out there, and Tropic Thunder is not one of them. You know, Robert Downey Jr. apologized, and yes, the film could have been reworked maybe in a different way, which would have made it more understandable for people. Emma Stone apologized. The thing is, all of this is not happening in a perfect world. It's happening in a world where people are actually being killed for racist things. So instead of focusing on not understanding Emma Stone's character in Aloha, why don't you focus on not murdering people? So, and that thing, this rubbish of being politically correct just for the sake of if I don't do it, like if Robert Downey Jr. hadn't apologized for that film, it would have been, a scandal. He never apologized for that. He didn't really need to. I mean, he could have. I mean, okay, it was fine. We accept that he apologized for it, but it sometimes feel like these people have to say that they have to apologize, um, otherwise they will just become the black sheeps of Hollywood. So you have to be inclusive just for the sake of being inclusive. And then, as I said before, people get confused because you get to the point of of not understanding when somebody's actually being, awarded because they actually deserve it or just because they need to. I don't know. It's all a very confused world. Ah, non sono vegano e vegetariano, non sono mai stato, però adoro cucinare e volevo aggiungere i piatti al mio repertorio. Hai fatto bene. The coldest oh no, these are all older comments from before. I eat frozen pizzas. Letterboxd sound like Goodreads for books, of course. Hey Debbie, hi, hello. There's a very good app that I use for iPhone called Must, and it's great to mark movies and series that you've seen and rate them. Honestly, it's great. You should check it. Portuguese cheers. Hi to Portugal. Yeah, I'm trying to get more into Letterboxd just because I can keep track of everything. Like now I can't even look at it because it's on my phone here, but there was like I had to move like 200 or something screenshots from my phone. It was getting out of hand, and also I hadn't realized it was nice to delete them because I was like, oh yeah, I've seen this and I've seen this and I've seen this. But now I can actually keep more trace of it because before the screenshots were just on my phone in the middle of like another million things. Instead now they're all there on one app. The Studio Ghibli movie was called When Marnie Was There. I've seen that. I watched that maybe I think I can't remember if it was like October maybe of last year, because I know I was at an older job I was doing, and I watched it one day during my lunch break, and I really liked that. I know it's one of those Studio Ghibli films a lot of people say very underrated. Like people always talk about Totoro or whatever, and not some of these. And I remember I watched, yeah, it was during my lunch break, because I had this moment of my life when I was working at an office and I had this very long lunch break, and I hate works that have lunch breaks because that means I have to stay at work an hour more, in which I'm not doing anything because you can't even do any work because you're on your lunch break, and then I have to stay at work. Yeah, I have to stay up physically at work an hour more. I would prefer not having a lunch break and just finishing everything before. Also, because when you have a lunch break, you get even less work done because before your lunch break, you're starting to break up, and then it takes a while to get back in after. And that was something that really, luckily, I'm not doing that anymore. But it's something I very ever always hated. So what I would do is I would take my bento box, box, not bot. I would take my bento box from home, and I would watch a film during my lunch break, because sometimes it was like an hour, and I would pick a movie that would be like an hour and a half or something. So I'd watch that hour and then just a half an hour in the end. Hi Debbie from New York City. I wish I could chat watching Selena Part 2 with Sis. Hi to New York City. I haven't even seen the first part, the first, I don't, is it the series? Yes. I haven't seen it because I don't actually know much about Selena now, or Selena, I would say it probably. I don't know. That's how much I know about her, about the singer. But I think maybe I should watch it to get to know more about her. I don't know. I was kind of put off because I thought I'm not going to understand that much about it. Uh, these are without context because I'm missing. Where are they? Where are they? Where are all the comments? By the way, I'm looking at how I look sideways. My hair is just absolutely crazy. It's fine. Where did I miss you? Can you make Discord a cinema enthusiast community? Would be great. You don't have to be active, of course. I only recently discovered what Discord is. That's how ancient I am. Uh, and I still need to figure out better what it is. So please explain this to me in simple terms. From what I understood, it's sort of like a Skype meets Twitch. Isn't it something like that? Isn't it like, I'm not sure because I've never actually been on it, but people have, like friends of mine were talking about it, and you like stream, but you stream only to a selected group of people, something like that. I'm so ignorant on this. Sorry about that. You look nice today. Well, that makes me happy because I'm looking at my hair sideways now, and it looks like I've been dragged through a bush. So, and then I look like a dinosaur when I do this. How about the ending of the movie? I don't know which movie because these are older comments. Dirò molto chiaramente e direttamente sei bellissima. Grazie, nonostante I capelli. Yeah, it's well portrayed how he gets accustomed to his disability, but at the same time, somewhere in the mind, he considers being inferior and wants his old life back. Riz Ahmed nailed it. He definitely. Oh, you were referring before to Sound of Metal, but yeah, Riz Ahmed is a great actor, and he definitely portrayed that feeling of, he regrets it, but he's so angry with this disability of his. He becomes deaf and he's like, I really wish I could get my life back, but at the same time he's like, I should accept that there are many other people like this in the world. um there are a lot of emotions in there. He's very angry because of it, but also because the thing is, he, for example, feels like a kid. He's this 30-year-old guy. I wouldn't say he's arrogant, but he is a little arrogant. He's like a bit of this rock star, and he he suddenly realizes that he can't communicate with anybody, so he has to learn sign language. But most of the people around him in the deaf community he meets and he becomes friends with, they learned sign language when they were kids. So as he learns sign language at the beginning, it's very basic, and he feels very cut out. So, for example, he is at the dinner table with, I don't know, 10 other people, and they're all managing to communicate through sign language, and he's completely cut out. And I think there's a moment in which he thinks he's a bit better than them, like oh, look at them having to use sign language to communicate, where I was a successful drummer and I could talk and I could listen and everything. Um, so there was definitely a very nuanced performance, but I'm not going to say anything about the rest to not spoil it. If you're looking forward to Amy Adams' new Netflix film this Friday, Woman in the Window, I saw the trailer came out like a couple of weeks ago, but I haven't seen it. But I suddenly saw that everybody was sharing it. Um, Maybe it was last week or a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it came out. So I have to watch the trailer first. But thank you for reminding me. I actually watch. If you've seen my what I watch this month videos, I actually watch most of what I watch comes from streaming services, unless it's stuff uh, that I have to go and search for or pay for elsewhere, like individually. Most of like the regular stuff I find online is on Netflix. Netflix has, I think, one of the biggest catalogs at the moment, and recently they've been releasing some pretty interesting topics. Today, actually, I haven't finished it yet. I have the last 20 minutes or something to watch. I was watching Monster, and with not Denzel Washington, John David Washington. It's the story of this kid who is accused of like this armed robbery and everything, and the jury just assumes that he's guilty because he's this black kid, and it's interesting. And that was on Netflix. You just every time I go on, they've added something new and different. And sometimes it's not the best of stuff, but compared to other streaming platforms, every single day when you go on, the front page will have something new and interesting on it. They're always switching it up, they're always adding new, different categories and interesting new, like, new added films. So, yeah. Foreign films, Kung Fu Hustle, Slumdog Millionaire, Three Idiots. So I've seen Three Idiots, I've seen Slumdog Millionaire, but I haven't seen Kung Fu Hustle. All are wonderful films that I enjoyed. Commenting, I have post reply to my comments above. Also, you're okay. Replying to cheers, Debbie. Have fun. Brick and Strange Days. They're darker, but they do that genre well. Three Idiots is one of the most popular Indian films of all time. It was, I think, the second Indian film I ever watched in my life, because the first one I watched was Dangal, and then the second one was, I think, Three Idiots. And when you watch already from the title, I think Three Idiots doesn't actually market itself well. Sorry to say that to the creators of it, but everything you see about Three Idiots makes it look like a very silly, simple, stupid. Allow me to say this, comedy, when it's not. It's much more than that. But like the already the title Three Idiots, and then every poster basically has these three guys doing like just pulling funny faces, or um I don't know, you know what I mean? It's just this, it looks like a very silly comedy. In reality, it goes much deeper. For example, because it's set in like at college, and there's these three friends who are students, but they get up into, all sorts of mischief and everything. But it gets really dark at some points, and it even covers topics which I hadn't thought about that much. For example, how the pressure there is on Indian students to perform. Like their families will be very, the pressure to succeed is immense, and if you don't succeed, you're considered a loser, and they are so much under pressure that they um, can't keep up with everything. And um, I don't know the statistics and everything, but apparently in India there's a very high rate of students committing suicide just because they can't keep up, and they had this feeling of, I'm just not going to manage, and I'm going to let my whole family down, and I can't manage to, to give them a future. Because for some Indian poorer families, if there's anybody Indian in the chat that can confirm this, but apparently for some Indian poorer families, these new generations, so our age, kids, I'm not a kid anymore, but you know what I mean. They are the only person that can save their family, because they can go abroad and they can study and they can become all these very successful people who will then bring money home. And so I think the kids have this pressure of, the trope of the Asian parent who wants them to become a doctor. Apparently, it's basically like that. Um, And so in the film Three Idiots, you know, a lot of it is comedy. It's a comedy film, but then in some points you're like, Jesus, like sometimes in the West we give for granted a lot of things. So it's interesting. Petrol fill up. Thank you. Thinking back of when I would never be able to do petrol. Other fun fact: when I lived in America for a while, I did like there are all these things. I think I managed to do all these. I saw a lot of like normal aspects of American life, if you see what I meant. But one thing I never did was fill up the car. I never put petrol in the car ever, ever. And I had no idea what I would have done. Like, just hi, and can I please fill up the tank? Like I literally don't even know the different types of petrol. Like here in Italy, I'm fine. I can do petrol in my car. I know exactly what I'm doing. I have no idea the different types of petrols, how to say them in English, nothing at all. And so I was so pleased that that was something I never had to do in America. But I think, yeah, I had an experience of everything. Um, even there was this one time that I was absolutely convinced. This is just a fun fact without me digressing, but uh, I was totally convinced one day that the police were going to arrest me in this huge thing because I was in a car accident. It was a very, very small car accident. The kind of thing in Italy, somebody would just swear at you, give you the middle finger and drive off. But basically, you know, when you're going in traffic and you are sort of inching forwards, it was like a huge, long queue of cars, and we were all just like inching along. And in Italy, I'd always driven a tiny, tiny, tiny car, and suddenly I was driving this humongous American car. So I couldn't really feel how big the car was in front, right? And so while we were inching, I touched the car in front. Now, nothing happened. Nothing, literally nothing happened. Like I went down and I was like, let me check, you know. But I got scared because it was like my first week in America. And the noise, if you ever be, I've been in a big car accident here in Italy. Not my fault. I was hit from behind and pushed into the car in front, and that was huge. If you've ever been in a car crash, that was a big crash, like a really big crash in Italy. Um, the noise is deafening because it's a metal box. It's huge, and you just don't understand anything. So when that happened in America, it wasn't the same, but the noise is always loud. So you're like, Jesus, what did I do? Went down, there was nothing. I literally just went bop on the woman in front. In Italy, the person in front would have just said "vaffanculo" or whatever, and we would have all gone home. She decided to call the police. Now, this was my first week in America. She decided to call the police. The police in America always have to come with the sirens on and everything, and they stop me on the side of the road and everything. I was like, oh my God, they're going to deport me back to Italy and whatever. It was my first week. The guy turns up, and it was so funny because he was obviously like barely 18. I think it was like his first week on the job, and he was these huge muscles and everything. He walked up and he was like, okay, what's the issue here? And the woman in the car, apparently the woman in front, the woman who called the police, the previous year, she had been hit by a drunk driver. And so she had this thing in her mind that we are all like evil drivers. And so she was like, oh my God, my shoulder and everything. She did all this thing. And it turns out that she shouldn't have been driving that car in the front. So I think she was trying to use this to her favor, you know, to get some money or insurance. I don't know what she did. Anyway, so I think in the end, the policeman was like, he was more annoyed in the end because it was like, "What did you call me for? Like, what do you need?" And I was like, "I didn't call you. She called you." Um, he was more annoyed than anything. He didn't even write anything. He was like, "Well, there's no damage. If you want to file a police report, you can file it, but my job's done here. There's nothing for me to see." And he went away. So I think I experienced a lot of different things in America, but one of them was not putting petrol in the car. Uh, I didn't go to the hairdressers while I was there. My hair was ridiculously long. I didn't do anything like aesthetically, like no beauty treatments, nothing. So I had no idea. Like if I had to go and do my nails, I'd be like, uh, paint my nails, please. Because I don't know how to say it in English. I really do not know how to say any of these things in English. I think even if I had to go to the doctors, I wouldn't know what to say, just because I'm just used to saying all of this stuff in Italian. Okay, this was all the comments about the feminist things. Let me get them back. Debbie mio nonno diva capito solo queste robe mi solo perché avere a casa piena di babù durissimi, che pena. What? What do you think about the streaming wars? Don't you think there are too many competitors for the long run? Um, I I don't think so. I think the two big competitors at the moment are, although, well, hang on a second, let me, because I suddenly thought of HBO Max. So the question Sick Boy is asking is whether there's going to be a huge competition between. But what about the huge competition between streaming services? Now, Netflix for many years was the big thing. Prime Video didn't used to be that good. If you remember how Prime Video was 5 years ago, there was nothing on it, and the small amount of stuff that was on it was not particularly good. Now, if you got it, there's plenty of good stuff because they just got more money in. It's part of Amazon, so everybody who's paying, using money on Amazon, you know how much we spend on Amazon. So obviously, it had more money. Films like Borat 2 brought in a ton of money, and so they're getting, better stuff out there, and it's cheaper. At least here in Italy, it's very cheap for a year. It's like less than half of what you're paid for Netflix. Then there's all this other stuff like Hulu and Chili or whatever. I don't think there's that much competition. I think you would only go on Hulu if you pick that as your streaming service. I wouldn't pay extra for Hulu. I've used it with, free, what do you call it? Like the trials and everything, but I don't think I'd pay to be my full thing. But now there's this new HBO Max. Now, I think that a lot of people underestimated HBO Max at the beginning. They were like, oh, nobody's going to pay HBO Max to watch these big films, whatever. This was before the pandemic, but now HBO Max is putting out this huge stuff. It's got Godzilla vs. Kong, Justice League, Tom and Jerry, all these huge films. Because what they do is, it's mostly Warner Bros. Stuff. What they do is the films that were supposed to come out only in cinemas, they come out in cinemas, and then for 1 month you can watch them on HBO Max. So lots of people who can't go to the cinemas because of COVID still get to watch them with um, more or less the same experience. I don't know if HBO Max will take over, apart from the fact that it's only available in the United States at the moment. But I don't think HBO Max will be able to take over Netflix. I think that Netflix will become more and more and more a bigger company. Um, I don't know what else they can add if not a bigger catalog. But yeah, I think still Netflix will stay like the big streaming thing. I can't tell if you're hot or not. You're cute but not sexy. That's a very confusing comment, but I accept it. Three Idiots, yeah, the title doesn't work too well. I agree, but enjoy it. Yeah, no, I don't think it's the title so much. I think it was like all the posters and these images, which kind of gave you a completely different idea of what the film was supposed to be, like the film is. I see you had a car accident of the third kind with a Karen. Yes. She definitely was a Karen, and she stepped out of the car, and the first thing, she was fine. She was fine. She stepped out of the car, and then when the policeman came, she was fine. She started grabbing on her shoulder. She was like, "But last year I was hit by a drunk driver. These drivers," and I was like, "No, I'm not drunk. Like, I'm not. I just been driving a humongous car that I've never driven in my life, and we've been inching along this road, and I happened to touch in front. I was wrong. I should have been at a bigger distance, but I'm sorry, but I did not hit you, and I just bumped into you. Not probably somebody at the supermarket with the trolley could have bumped into you harder. Not saying I was right. I was totally wrong, but I don't think there was a reason to call the police. And the policeman, he was because also the policeman, he was literally, as I said before, he looked like he was out of, he could have out of, how do you call it, the police academy, whatever. He was like barely 18, and then I handed him. I had for the first 2 months in America, I had to have an international driver's license, and I had to always carry that with my passport, which was already an anxiety thing because I had to go like everywhere in America with my passport always with me, which I panicked because I was like, if I lose this with my visa and everything in it. Anyway, he didn't know what to do with it. He looked at it and was like, right, because it's just this grey piece of paper they give you. Um, and then I was like, oh my God, what if something's wrong with my driver's license and whatever? And after that, I had to do my New Jersey driver's license, which was also an experience. Here in Italy, a driver's license costs something around at least €300, at least. In America, it cost me $8. $8 for a driver's license. I couldn't believe it. And then also here in Italy, I was used to anything you have to do paperwork wise. Nobody really knows how it works. Like you have to find a list of things you have to take, and then if they're slightly different, which they always are, it's not okay. And then you have to queue up for hours in one place, but then you might need a stamp in another place, and then nobody knows what they're doing basically. Even if you have to go to the doctor, you're like, who do I have to call? What do I need to do? It's all confused. So I didn't know what to do to get the driver's license, and so I just decided to call the DMV, which is just the office of all the driver related stuff. And the woman on the phone was like, "Well, yeah, you just turn up and take the test." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, but what do I need to take? Like, what do I need to, how do I book it?" And she was like, "No, you just turn up, take this and these documents, and you just take the test." And I was like, "Okay." And literally, what you do is you just turn up on a random day at your local DMV, you queue up. That's the annoying part, there's quite a long queue. You queue up, they do all your documents, you pay $8, go in the back, and you take the test. There. If you pass it, you come out and you get your driver's license. If you don't, you go home. And I was like, because I didn't pass it the first time, we'll get to that in a moment. And I was like, oh my God, and when can I do it? She was like, I don't know, just try next week. Just like that, another $8. Like it was so, no, it was $10, sorry, so €8. Um, And I didn't pass it because this was an annoying thing. Um, I have a driver's license here in Italy, obviously, not obviously, but I have a driver's license. And in Italy, a lot of the questions are, you know, about the theory of driving. What distance should you keep from the car in front, and yada yada, whatever. So I expected the questions to be more or less similar, and I'd prepared. I had the app to answer the questions. I had the book at home, and I studied all of that. And I'd taken my notes, but I studied all the wrong stuff because when I got there, they were like, um, "How many ounces of wine are there in? No, how many ounces of alcohol? I don't know. Are there? They basically had to calculate ho to how much a glass of whiskey, how much would it be in beer cans? First of all, I didn't know ounces and gallons and everything because I knew everything in liters. And the secondly, I was like, shouldn't I be knowing how to drive and that I shouldn't be drinking? So I can see what they were thinking. You've got to learn that sometimes a little glass of some alcohol would be a lot of cans of beer. But then the other questions, they were like, if you have snow on the top of your car and you're driving and that snow comes off and it accidentally damages somebody else's property, what is the fine? But how much is the fine if it's the second time you do that? And what is the fine if that's the second time you do it, but you're within 50 yards from a school? It was all this huge stuff like this. So obviously I had understood wrongly what it was all about. So anyway, I went home, studied it all again, went back and I got the driver's license. After I got the driver's license, sorry, I'm rambling, but finally I have somebody to chat with. So I had the driver's license and story time. This is like Tana Mongeau telling the story times, but not exaggerated. Um, I didn't get the driver's license because I was like, okay, I had the theory, and for countries that have more or less the same driving system, so they drive on the same side of the road and everything, you don't need to take the practical exam. You don't need to do the driving part. They just convert the rest of your driver's license into the American one. For example, somebody who is from Australia will not be able to do that because they obviously need to learn to drive on the other side of the road. But for countries like Italy, it's fine. You just Um, you just convert the rest of your driver's license. But with me, they didn't want to do that because first of all, their system wasn't working, and second of all, on the driver's license in Italy, everything's written in Italian. There's no translation. I don't know if on the new ones there's a translation, but on the old ones, at least the one I have, everything's written in Italian. So they're like, I don't know what's written on here. Like legally, by law, I cannot take this driver's license because I don't know what's written on it. So I had to go to a professional translating service and have it translated and take it back. So that's where it got a bit expensive, but it was only because I think their system wasn't working or whatever. All of that was to say about my Karen uh, encounter. Anyway, I don't know. Many friends drop Netflix for Disney Plus. So I'm going to say one thing in favor of Disney Plus. When it first came out, which was when The Mandalorian came out, 2 years ago now, is it? I didn't do it at first because I was like, no, Disney Plus is just going to be uh, Disney kid stuff and I don't care, and why should I pay? Then I did the free trial for it and I was still not totally convinced. But then I renewed it and more and more stuff kept on getting added. And I was like, well, you know what? In the end, there is quite a lot of interesting stuff on here. And now they've added all like the Stars catalog and everything, and there's quite a lot of interesting stuff. Now, literally, there is Nomadland. Here in Italy, the other day I went on Disney Plus and there was Nomadland, like the Oscar winning movie. It's not even in cinemas in Italy yet, it's on Disney Plus. So they have definitely have a lot of stuff, although it is mostly restricted just to the Disney stuff, which in reality, if you think that Disney owns, I won't say everything, but it owns a lot of stuff you wouldn't even expect to be Disney related. Um, and they also have a lot of like extra things, like Nomadland isn't Disney. Um, and what I'm thinking is they might have done it because Chloe Zhao, the director of Nomadland, is the director of Eternals, the new Marvel movie. So they might have done that to, I don't know why. But yeah, I can see why many people dropped it because there's there's quite a lot of stuff on Disney Plus. 600 € in totale per la patente, 3 test, le guide, le prove e tutta la burocrazia. In Italia 600, perché in America non così tanto. Oh, there we go. Get my internet died literally as I tried to join stream last time. Hope there was a juicy film chat. There was. There was, but you're here now to join. My my stream was interrupted before because my phone decided to explode. I watched Inland Empire for the first time today, stunned. Let me write that one down. Also, I need to write Kung Fu Hustle that somebody wrote before. Kung Fu Hustle and Inland Empire. Sei molto carina, grazie. The driver's testing system here in what is the NA country is so or is a state, is it in America? Is so loosey goosey. I don't think you want any of us driving over here. Well, as we're going to talk about this, I'm going to say if you learn to drive in Italy, you can drive anywhere in the world. Maybe the only country that might beat us is India for chaos, but everything you don't know what. And you don't know what's going on in Italy. Like you're going on a road and there's no sign, there's no lines or where you have to stop, and there's roadworks, and there's a car in the middle and three lines of cars parked. And here in the north of Italy, it's still kind of reasonable. In the south of Italy, it's whoever goes first goes first. There's no. I've been in certain towns in Sicily where traffic lights just don't exist. Traffic lights don't exist. Stop signs don't exist. Nothing exists. It's just drive in. Whoever goes first goes first. The roads, there's potholes everywhere, holes, all sorts of stuff that falls down, people, animals. If you go in Sardinia, they're just cows in the middle of the street and everything. Um, so if you learn to drive here, and it's not with automatic transition, it's all manual transmission, you can drive basically anywhere in the world. Maybe not in India. So when I got to the United States, They took me for they wanted the people for whom I had to drive for, because driving was a big part of my job there. They wanted to see if actually knew how to drive before they handed me their BMW, this huge car. Um, so they took me out, and I at the beginning I was like I wasn't able to drive because it was with how's it called, the automatic thing. So you only have two pedals, and I couldn't really balance which one I had to press and everything. Um, but then once I figured it out, I was just driving fine, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, I see you know how to drive." And I was like, "Yeah," because the streets are humongous in America. Even the smallest town will have like the streets are literally double of what they are here in Italy. Like here in Italy, you have the space for two cars to go, and sometimes even not. You don't have space for two. Like one will have to stop somewhere or reverse and to let the other person go back. And sometimes there's space there, the car parks on the side. In America, they're huge. They're like 4 lanes for where just like one or two cars need to go. And in addition to that, everything, the roads are more or less perfect, and there are signs everywhere. And I used to live just outside New York, and people were like, "Oh, you can take the car wherever, but just don't drive in New York." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess because it's complicated to drive in New York." Then I went to New York, and literally everything. There's stop signs everywhere, traffic lights, everything is clearly indicated. In Italy, you might be driving, you get to the stop sign, and then you're like, oh, I had to be 3 lanes down there to turn because, and you just somehow manage to get over. In America, just everything. You have signs like in 50 meters, you're going to have to start turning left because you're then going to have to turn left later. It wasn't hard. Even the roundabouts, they were like, "Oh my goodness, there's this huge roundabout. Please be careful." And I was like, "It's a roundabout. No panicking." And so what I saw in America was a lot of drivers would panic when something different happened. So say there were roadworks, the whole town would just be a total delirium because nobody knew what to do, and they'd start beeping and honking, and they would like, "Oh my goodness." In Italy, you're like, "Fine, whatever, I'll just go a bit on the sidewalk and back, it's fine." Just so that was funny. um, there were all these odd things, and even something I still didn't understand, the like the fact that you could turn when it's red. Something which, here in Italy, to turn when it's red is something completely unheard of, but you can in certain countries there. Another thing though that I hadn't that at the beginning I really risked, and I was like I had to understand, was that in Italy when you stop, and most in Europe basically everywhere, if you stop at a stop line with a traffic light, the traffic light is here. In America you stop, but the traffic light is on the other side of the street, so you're looking at it. I think it's because their cars tend to be bigger. So if you're stuck behind a big car, you can't see the traffic light, whereas um, with it being at a distance, you can see it better. But in European mind, you stop where you see the traffic lights. So what I used to risk was my mind would make me think I had to drive all the way there to stop it, which was in the middle of the stop thing. Anyway, it's complicated to explain, but I managed somehow to get through that. Also, there are no parking signs on the ground. So here, in all of Europe, there's the box drawn on the ground and you park in that box. In America, there's not. You just park on the side of the road. But then you're like, in some places, you can't park right. So you're like, because you according to there, because I studied very well for my second driver's license attempt, so I knew this, is that you can't park at a certain amount of meters from the end of the curve. So then I'd be like, okay, am I too close? Can I park here? Can I not park here? What do I have to do? Because you don't ever know um, what you can do, what you can't do. And another thing that I found very different from Europe is that I used to drive there only for work. I very, very, very rarely used the car for anything personal. I only used it a couple of times when I went to like another town. Like I went to see Lady Bird at the cinema in a completely different town, and I took the car because it was far away. But for everything else, I used to use a bike because here in Italy, using a bike is normal. In most of Europe, it's normal. If you live in a town and you want to get around, you walk or you take a bike. Nobody there does that. So I would go around town, I would do everything on the bike. I'd go to the gym on the bike, I'd go to the library on the bike, I'd go shopping on the bike, I'd go to the cinema on the bike. Nobody else did this, literally. So everybody was in their cars, always with the windows closed. They'd always everybody would be with their windows closed with the aircon on, and they'd be watching me, looking at me like, "What's this weird woman doing around on her bike round town?" I put all stuff in the basket in the front, and I even pimped it up so it had like the flashing lights because I would take my bike to the station in the morning, and then I'd come back in the evening and I would cycle back home from the station with all like the flashing lights and everything. Anyway, that's a thing. Hai mai visto Misfits? No, purtroppo non l'ho mai visto, però ne ho sentito parlare molto bene. Yeah, the roads are absurdly big. Flip side, it's terrifying to watch European bike racing and driving on what looks like to me bike paths. Europeans will cycle anywhere, just anywhere you can give them a bike. Especially they're like this is a thing Italians are really annoyed about, and I'm annoyed too. What will happen in Italy is people will get together to go cycling. And when I get together, I mean like a dozen, if not more, cyclists, sometimes 20 cyclists at the same time. And they will go cycling and they will go on all these little countryside lanes, the kind that you can't see behind the curbs, so you can't take over them. And what they will do is they will not stay in a line. There will be like three or four of them, one next to another, and they'll be talking and chatting and changing over lanes and everything. And that's the thing that annoys everybody so much here is that they just ruin everything because you have to stay behind them because you can't take over them. And they're just like chatting with four of them in a line, and they'll even get annoyed at you if you sort of honk at them to move over to the side. And it's so annoying. I don't know. Don't listen to the flat earther, he's wrong. I don't know who the flat earther was in the comments. Good observation, so you can see over the car. Caridad, stai con noi fino all'alba? No, credo che tra poco inizierò a riassumere. Kevin, we want to talk about cinema, not about American drivers. Well, yes, it was just me talking about my life experiences. On the cycling thing, never read any local content about cyclist car owners here are so entitled that anyone would dare be on their roads. I don't know, it's always these things about cyclists that I I think they're enjoying it so much when they're going that they don't actually realise. And by the way, this is the same in England, there are not that many cyclists, and my grandfather said that um, when he came to Italy, not for the first time, but when he would come like regularly to visit my parents here, he said the one thing he was always surprised was just like the amount of cyclists everywhere, which obviously in England, then that there are not that many of. I used to have a Dutch colleague at work, and he was an avid cyclist, as all Dutch people are. And he was always convincing me to come to work by bike, and I was like, no, Hans, just I don't know. And he said the thing about Italy that people like to cycle so much on uh, is that it's how do you call it, hilly. Instead, Holland is all completely flat. In Italy, instead, you get all these beautiful views. You go up the mountains and everything. And he'd literally turn up to work in the afternoon. Say we had an afternoon shift together, and I'd be like, "Oh, Hans, what did you do today?" I was like, "Oh, at 6 a.m. I was already on the top of the mountain, and the mountain in question was like 3,000-meter mountain. But at 6 a.m. I'd already biked to the top of the mountain, and I, came back down, had some lunch, and I was here." That's the kind of like stealth these cyclists have. If you ever gets the chance, watch Warrior on HBO Max. See, we were talking about HBO Max. Now, the problem with HBO Max is that it's not available here in Italy. Now, some things such as Justice League, they made them available on Sky here in Europe, so we still get to see them, but not everything else. So I think their plans were to release it in Europe this summer, if I'm not mistaken, which would be a good thing because we're missing out on a lot of films that are going to be released there otherwise, because I don't think they're just going to start putting everything on Sky, and I don't think a lot of people want to pay for Sky because apart from that, maybe there's not what they really want to watch. But anyway, Sì, perché l'hanno bocciata sia in America che in Italia, scherzo. No, in Italia non mi hanno bocciata. No, sì, mi hanno bocciata la pratica però in Italia. Ciao, cosa preferisci, monopattino elettrico e e-bike? Non ho mai provato nessuno dei 2, però credo che preferirei una bici elettrica, perché il monopattino elettrico non lo so. Guardi anime o leggi manga? Non leggo manga, ma non perché non vorrei, ma semplicemente non ci sono mai entrata. Però sì, guardo because I'm sorry, I'm answering in Italian, I should be answering in English because they asked if I read manga or watch anime. But I not into watching reading mangas, not it just never happened really. I don't know why. But I do watch quite a few anime. I'm trying to catch up with some that I've never really caught up with. For example, my boyfriend is a huge fan of Dragon Ball, and I knew like the general lines of Dragon Ball because it was always on TV here as a kid, and I used to watch a few episodes, but I never really got into it. So with him, we're trying to like rewatch from the beginning because then he can provide, a bigger insight into certain things that go on behind the series. Um, so yeah, also, here in Italy, we anime. I've done this video. I spoke about this in this video about Italy's obsession with Japan. And growing up here in Italy, we all just watched anime. Like the cartoons were all Japanese cartoons. There was nothing, Cartoon Network kind of stuff. Only the very, very rich kids got Cartoon Network, and still, what it was not nothing compared to what probably people were getting abroad. So everything we were watching was just Japanese anime. Um, so some people just got more into one thing rather than the other. Some people were really into Dragon Ball, others were really into Sailor Moon. By the way, I saw a trailer for Sailor Moon or something the other day. I didn't actually click on it, I just saw the thumbnail for it on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so yeah, we all got into it more or less at the same time, and it just stayed with us. If you ask any Italian kid of my age or older, that's all we watched. The kids, like for example, my brother, who's a young teenager now, most of what he watched was not anime. He watched basically nothing of that. It was all just the new cartoons, if that makes sense. Not new cartoons, but High Life, Debbie. What? Just don't watch Dragon Ball Super. Okay, so High Life. Yes, I watched that maybe 2 years, no, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, something like that, with Robert Pattinson. It's a very unconventional film. Basically, it's set. I don't know how much I can say because of spoilers, because again, I don't remember at what point in the film certain things are revealed. But I think I can say this: it's set in space, and it's set in on like a space shuttle station thing in space, and the people on board are all like convicts, and they have to stay there, and it's part of their program. It's part of their sentences that they have to spend time there, and there are all these very weird interactions. For example, there's like this sex room, and they're forced to like oh I don't know. It's really odd. They go in there to masturbate, and it's very odd. And then Robert Pattinson is on there, and he's looking after this little kid. It's very one of those weird introspective films. And it was more or less around the time that people started to realize that Robert Pattinson was more than Twilight, because they'd already started, to figure that out with a few films. But I think it was around the time of Good Time and High Life that people started to realize, okay, he's not Edward from Twilight. Which for me, it's even Edward from Twilight is fine, but I think that was the time people started to realize that there's more to him than just that. Did you chat One's Vision at all? I'm curious about anyone else's take on it. I haven't chatted about it because I haven't watched it. I haven't watched One Division, and I haven't watched The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, for the simple fact that I'm not that much into Marvel. Um, like, there's nothing wrong with it. I've just always been more into some of the DC films, and I've never really got into Marvel. And I also think that Marvel's got to the point in which everything you watch has references to other things. So there's all of these inside jokes about and references and characters referencing other characters. And then if you watch, so for example, you could watch from what I read about a lot for work. I've read a lot about WandaVision. You could theoretically watch it just as its standalone thing, but you probably wouldn't enjoy it that much because you're supposed to watch it thinking, oh, now that character said that because it's a reference to that, and oh my god, now that happened. So in that film, it must have been like this. And obviously, I'm not going to have that experience because for me, it's just all the same. I don't know anything about all of these references, so I thought, you know what, I'm just not going to watch it when I want to. There's so much other stuff that other things I would like to watch, but I know that so many people loved it. They really, really loved it. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they loved it. Um, but for example, in I could, I wouldn't be able to watch the Falcon and the Winter Soldier because I wouldn't. I like Captain America, and then there was like another Captain America, and then this other Captain America, and for me, the little I knew was that Chris Evans was Captain America, so I was all very confused. So I don't think I'd be able to enjoy it that much, unfortunately. I actually, the other day, I had this thing because what happened was there was that Marvel put out a video, what, a week ago or something, and it was dedicated to their. My phone battery is dying a bit, so I need to start wrapping up. Basically, Marvel made this video dedicated to the Phase 4, so all the upcoming films they're going to be, because their films are divided into these phases in which they're sort of connected one to another. And there's this new phase of these new films. There's like Eternals and Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. There's Thor: Love and Thunder. There's Black Panther 2. There's what looks like a new Fantastic Four film. Anyway, all these different things. And the video they made for it was beautiful. Even if I'm not a Marvel fan, that did give me goosebumps. It basically showed all these epic moments from the MCU with Stan Lee talking, saying, we all are different, but in the end, there's one thing that brings us all together, and that we're all fans. And there was all this emotional music and the Avengers extended theme, and then they showed the reaction to Chris Evans, like Captain America, saying, Avengers assemble at the cinema, like they filmed the audience's reaction. And I thought, well, if I'm feeling moved and touched by this, I can't even begin to imagine how it must be for a huge Marvel fan. And I started thinking, if people love it so much, there must be a reason behind it. So I was like, you know what, I should sit down and watch all the films. And the thing is, I actually aren't missing that many because I have seen most of the big beginning ones, Iron Man and Thor, and I've seen like the Spider-Man ones, and I've seen what is it, the Ant-Man and the no, I've only seen Ant-Man and the Wasp. I haven't seen Ant-Man. Anyway, I've seen a lot. I've seen Thor, and I think I've even seen the second Thor, if I'm not mistaken. So I have seen a lot of films. I don't have to go back 13 years to 2008 and Iron Man to catch up with him. So I thought, what if I did sit down and I watched, all the Age of Ultrons and Infinity Wars and Endgames, like, just so then I know what's behind all of this. Because sometimes I do feel like I'm missing out. Because at the same time, people are like, oh, so you're a DC fan. I wouldn't describe myself as a super DC fan. Like, obviously, between Marvel and DC, I'm definitely 100% DC. And I've seen all maybe of the films in DCEU. I don't know if I'm missing any at this point. I want to rewatch Aquaman because I couldn't really remember it that well, and I've seen they've added it on Netflix, so I might rewatch that to brush up my memory. But I don't I don't think I'm super knowledgeable on DC either. So there's always this thing where I want to know more. And I've always thought, I just rewatched the Marvel films. I just will. And now this video came out, and I was like, why don't I rewatch it? Just watch them all and catch up with it, so I know what everybody is going about. Anyway, so yeah. Inizio di manga, hai visto Top Gun 2? No, cioè Top Gun Maverick esce a Natale. You know, Debbie, I adore Pattinson even for this. Despite his global I don't know how to say that. See, I'm English and I don't know how to say certain words. He never refuses role in minor films. I have so much respect for that. Pattinson did a great thing. Robert Pattinson, when he did Twilight and Remember Me. He did all these huge teen romancy trashy films, right? And he had a choice in front of him. He could have kept going on that road path there. He could have made a ton of money, and but then his career would have only been limited to that, and it would have ended there. Or he could have chosen to go down the path of leaving aside the bigger projects and doing good small projects, which in the long run would prove his worth as an actor and bring them to a better future. He chose this second path, which I think you and I have a lot of respect for him because that meant making less money, that meant taking it way longer for him to be acknowledged in the film industry. He has been in the film industry for what, 10, 15 years at this point, and only now is he being finally acknowledged for being such a great actor. So you see what I mean? He could have done this way earlier. He could have gone down the path of making these cheesy films. He would have been on the biggest Netflix films now for the teenagers and everything, but it wouldn't have been the same thing. Instead, he went and did all these smaller, unconventional indie projects, but which then showed his worth. As movie lovers, many of us know these patterns and films, but what I always say is you have to put yourself, um, you have to try to imagine this seen by somebody who isn't as knowledgeable as us on films. The average moviegoer, not everybody knows about Pattinson and about High Life and everything. So their idea of him was Twilight, Tenet, Batman. They don't know about all of this path that he did, and he's often spoken badly about Twilight and everything. Now, he was not the first to have this path in front of him. In fact, Leonardo DiCaprio has always said he regretted doing Titanic because he was terrified that he would just become the hot poster boy. Because when he did Titanic, um, he just became this. He was on all these magazines. He was, the boy of the year, the hot guy. Though everybody wanted him in romantic films. Everybody wanted him to be the new teenage boy. Not he wasn't a teenage boy, but the guy teenagers would love, and that terrified him. And luckily, he did the same thing. He didn't go down that path there. He chose, he was offered some different and more interesting roles. There was also, I can't remember what film it was, so I'm not going to say it's something stupid because I don't remember. But if I'm not mistaken, around that time, in those years, in the 90s, River Phoenix passed away. And if I'm not mistaken, some roles that would have been assigned to Phoenix were given to Leonardo DiCaprio, which is not something fun, but he was lucky that that happened. If you see, it's horrible to say, but in the bad situation, he took on the steps of a very famous actor. Um, and so, it's a combination of talent, but it's also a combination of just a coincidence of things happening. Sometimes they're negative things, which then bring on better things. Anyway, it's an interesting thing to say that Pattinson was a great actor and he turned down the prospect of making a ton of money to take 15 years of being treated like the absolute scum of Hollywood because still to date people think that Pattinson is trash, to then be where he is today. Was just looking at IMDb, didn't realize there was a new Batman with Robert Pattinson. There is. I have lost track of when it's coming out because they've postponed it so many times. I think that at the moment it's being released next year, but I don't know when, at what point. I think all these dates now will just change continuously, but apparently it's supposed to be scheduled for next year. And so, yeah, I think the general consensus is that he actually looks like physically in the first images from the film, he looks like the first trailer that was released. He actually does look like a good Batman. We will have to see if he actually acts like he acts like a good Batman. Um, from everything we've seen, it does look like a good, interesting project. And I'm proud of Patterson because yeah, he really did come a long way. And I don't know if I was in his steps. Imagine doing 10 plus years of people just saying you're the shittiest actor ever because of Twilight. Imagine just going on every day, waking up and going to do your job as an actor, knowing that 70% of the audience hates you and they hate your roles and you think you don't deserve anything, and you'd still turn up and go and do all these incredible roles and still, put on a smile and talk about his films and everything. I personally would have gone absolutely insane because there were petitions to have him removed. There were people like death threats, and people still just won't associate him to the concept of a good actor. And I'm so proud of him for sticking to himself and just getting through all of that. And imagine doing all of this under the spotlights of like everything being public. And then also he's like a lot of things were unlucky in his life. I mean, he used to date Kristen Stewart from Twilight, and he found out that she was cheating on him from some paparazzi photos. Imagine just going like opening up a magazine the next day and you just discover your girlfriend was cheating on you from paparazzi photos. I mean, anyway, so he's been through a lot of bad stuff, and he's often talked about loneliness, and he's I I don't know. I think he's an interesting guy. He I don't know if he's the right person for fame. I don't think he's ever wanted that kind of fame. Ever since he's become famous, he's always absolutely hated sharing anything about his life. He's always been very uncomfortable in front of cameras. Like he puts on a funny show. Recently, in recent years, he will be like very funny. He has a very strong sense of humor, and he'll go and do all these interviews. But whenever it's things that are a bit different from the regular fun interview, he will be a bit uncomfortable. He hates talking to people outside of regular interviews. So he's just, I don't know. He went through a lot. So I'm really proud of where he is now. I stumbled. Oh wait, I was about to delete a message by accident. Pattinson or Patterson? It's me that can never pronounce anything. It's Pattinson. I stumbled upon this channel from that Devil's Advocate, and it says, I'm pleased, although that's the video in which I mispronounce Keanu Reeves's name for the whole film, for the whole video. I was like, Keanu Reeves. Twilight and the Hunger Games are the only young adults in the last decade. I don't know. They probably like other good things. I mean, even like recent films like Lady Bird. Sorry, it's because I just read a rude comment that popped up that involved boobs, so I said burbs instead of bird. Um, yeah, like Lady Bird is another good coming of age young adult film. I've never seen a crazier female crowd than the one in Rome outside the Plaza Hotel for DiCaprio and the Titanic premiere day many years ago. Yeah, I mean, people were a bit insane for DiCaprio, and he was absolutely terrified of this idea that people would just associate him, and they did for a few years, but they would just keep on associating him to this teenage heartthrob and not the professional actor he is. And sometimes you have to just stick to yourself and think things in the long run. Somebody said, ma perché cacchio eviti le mie domande? I don't know, but ho saltato la risposta. Aspetta che vado indietro. Mi sento un poco offeso. Cos'hai chiesto? In the heat of the night. Scusa, sorry. Ho saltato una risposta. Ah no, è anche una prima. Have you ever seen Path of Glory? So what do you think about it? Mi dispiace se non ho risposto, ma ogni tanto salto qualche domanda. Comunque In the Heat of the Night no, non l'ho visto. Però fortunatamente dai almeno questa live è una delle poche in cui non ho risposto a tutte le domande dicendo: "No, mi dispiace, non l'ho visto, no, non mi dispiace, non l'ho visto", come i vecchi tempi. I have received, an emoji banning me. Pattinson was great in The Lighthouse. He was, yeah, these are one of some of the most recent films in which are really proven that by now he is one of the most successful and professional and best actors working at the moment. So again, yeah, I'm proud of him for how where he is now. Come on, people, Pattinson is a hell of an actor. Sometimes I hate so much mainstream opinions. Yeah, people just seem to think that you have to hate on him. Um, Per Bacco le hai saltate tutte. Ma sicuramente ho saltato anche domande degli altri, perché ci saranno infatti sto leggendo indietro, ci saranno un po' di domande che ho saltato. Ehm, me mi mi recupererò, no, come si dice, recupererò, scusa. Patterson is a hell of an actor. Sometimes I hate him. Yeah, I was saying that people think they have to say Patterson is a bad actor just because you have to. Now, again, I don't want to talk about Twilight, but people always have the thing of they have to say they hate Twilight, um, even if they don't hate it that much. If you see what I mean, you just have to say it. Um, so yeah, there's this thing about having to say you hate Pattinson and everything. And the thing is, a lot of people who say this about Pattinson, they don't. In reality, they haven't even seen that many films of his. I'm pretty sure a lot of people who say that Twilight stinks are people who haven't even seen Twilight. Now, um, a while back, I don't know when, it was like a couple of years ago. It was the 10th anniversary of Twilight, and they did a special thing at the cinema where you could go back and watch it again. I think I now with thinking back of it, I might have, gone to see it, but it was not a big thing. But anyway, they put all the trailers back in cinemas, so when you went to see other films, you'd see the trailer for Twilight too, as if it was all, a new thing. So I went to see that, and I can't remember what film it was that I was watching, but it was a completely different genre. And before the film, they showed the trailer for Twilight, and the whole audience started groaning and they were complaining. And what I was thinking is, yeah, you're complaining, but that you're not the target audience of that film. So I don't know, a lot of people who probably have never even seen Twilight are just complaining about it. They probably would complain even after seeing it. I mean, there's understandably a lot to complain about it, but yeah, I don't know, and I love it so much, and I've talked about it so much. I've bored everybody with all my videos about Twilight every time I end up talking about it. Uh, But the thing is, what I hate is people just blindly saying, "Oh, it sucks," and Patterson isn't worthy of anything when they haven't even seen it. So anyway, I don't know, Debbie, if you ever talked about Nomadland. I haven't talked about it yet. Um, I really liked it. I really, really liked it. Um, I watched it twice, and my mum wants to watch it, so we might watch it another time together. I can see why it won all those awards. I didn't doubt that thingy Frances McDormand would have won. It's a great performance. For those who haven't seen it, it's about a woman who has a nomadic lifestyle. So she lives in a van and she moves across America, and she's struggling financially, she's struggling physically. There's the ups and downs of a nomadic living. Obviously, you are not tied to a physical place, and you meet a lot of new people, and you experience the beauty of the land, but at the same time, you don't have the warmth of a home and safety to go back to. Uh, and if you're missing money and something happens to your van, that's going to be a big problem. And so there are all these different things, and a lot of the people who are shown in the film are actually people who live a nomadic lifestyle, and a lot of them didn't know that Frances McDormand is actually a famous actress. From what I gather, I think a lot of them thought it was like a documentary at first, just about their lifestyle. And Frances McDormand was so immersed in the film that she actually lived in that van while filming. Like for 5 or 6 months, she lived in that van. She slept in it, ate in it, everything in it because she wanted to feel like the characters. She did their same jobs. She was actually offered a job at a Target or Walmart, something like that, because people actually literally just thought she was a part of a person, a part of the nomadic community. So obviously you can understand that with all of this, the performance she gave was great. Um, I think Frances McDormand is a great character and a great actress, and I really want to get more into her as an actress. I want to watch more of her. I think I've always liked, even when she's out of her character and she's just a regular actress being interviewed, she's always had this thing of being very down to earth. Like in all the questions she's asked, in all the interviews, she will never give that fake, pretentious answer. Sometimes it passes off as a bit of like a hipster thingy way of being, but I've always liked like there was even this interview they did recently with Chloe Zhao and Frances McDormand about the film, and she every question she's asked, she answers in as if me and you were speaking. She doesn't come up with the "oh, it was such a great project to be on," and I feel so blessed, and the usual stuff that actors say. She literally feels as if it's just a person that you would talk to in your regular life. So, our cinemas back for you all. Hope there's a summer of real movies in theaters again. My AirPods are dying actually. There's the message, but yes, cinemas are open again. They had opened, so everything in Italy closed in March of last year, and they've been closed. Things have basically been closed up until now. Only last summer, for for just a couple of months, everything was open again, and cinemas were open too. But basically, we just went, saw Tenet, and that was it. And so they only reopened now. But as I was saying earlier, some cinemas haven't opened because they just don't know what to show, and they don't have the staff because they didn't know they were supposed to reopen because everything in Italy happened so quickly. They were like, okay, fine, from next week you'll all reopen everything. I don't care if you didn't have time to hire people or prepare in advance. So some of the biggest chains in Italy, like the Space Cinema chain, which is like the big chain, aren't actually open at the moment. But theoretically they could be open, and like I went to a local cinema the other day, which was all open again. I'm going to have to start wrapping this up because my AirPods are dying and my voice is dying too. Have you seen the show Them on Amazon Prime? Yes, good movie Them. I haven't seen it yet. Do you recommend it? Debbie, sinceramente, progetti per il futuro in general, projects for my future in general. Well, referring to YouTube, I will be I will commit to being more present on YouTube and sharing more on YouTube and producing more content on YouTube because I miss doing it. I miss chatting. I miss sharing my opinions, and then it ends up that I have so much to convey when after a month, I just I have so much to see. If look, I've been for 2 hours plus talking, and I haven't even covered a fraction of what I wanted to say. So I haven't seen Invincible either on Prime. Tenet felt so bad, or poor Tenet feels so bad for that release and issues it had. Yeah, I've talked about Tenet quite a few times, and I think talking about I'll wrap this all up with the last thoughts on Tenet. Um, Tenet was I have mixed opinions because I really enjoyed it, but it could have been better with much less. All a series of things. The release was, Christopher Nolan had this thing of wanting it to be released on that week. He wanted it to be released in cinemas, but I think part of it was the because of the Oscars. If you want your film to be released, to be included at the Oscars, it has to be screened for a certain amount of days in American cinemas, or it has to go online. For this year, only this year it was available. There was also the opportunity of it going online and qualifying for the Oscars. Obviously, Christopher Nolan didn't want it. He's famous for being a bit about films going online, so he didn't want it to go online, and he said it was only supposed to be released in cinemas. So I think what they did was they put it out quite fast and with a lot of issues because a lot of people felt it was a bit rushed. And I don't know, I have various thoughts on it. Also, it was supposed to be what, 3 hours and a half long, and then when you go and watch it, it's not actually what it's shorter than what it was supposed to be. So you think, did they just cut out bits out of it to get it out into cinemas? And then also in China, there was this law. I don't know if it's a law, I don't know, but basically, films over 3 hours will not get this. They will not be pushed the same way. And I know a lot of filmmakers are now trying to please the Asian audience because, especially a Chinese audience, because that's where the big money comes in. China spends a lot on films. Um, and so not being able to show it in China or not having the same things and the same amount of push in China was a big problem. So it nearly feels as if, they just were like, okay, let's just cut out half an hour of it, and it's still going to be a good movie and we can show it in China and everything. And I don't know. I have like full reviews on my channel which I speak on it. I just think Nolan he just did too much. He was like, okay, I have this big budget, so I'm just going to do it the biggest way possible. And the first time I watched it, I was like, yeah, this is a good movie. That's it. um, the second time I watched it with a notepad and I literally wrote down everything. There was that famous story of me, and it was 16 pages of notes to make my explain video. And when I finished it, I was like, this is a masterpiece. Everything fits perfectly. All the plot holes are finally understood them, and everything makes sense. The problem is, you can't do a film that needs 16 pages of notes on at a cinema and expect people to understand it and enjoy it. That's the problem with this Nolan film. If you watch his Interstellar, if you watch his Inception, if you watch his um, what's it called, The Prestige, Insomnia, all these films here, what was Memento, you will lose track at some point because it's so complicated, but you will still be able to have, a general understanding of the movie. In Tenet, the problem is if you miss one line of dialogue, you are not going to understand the rest of the plot. You are just not going to understand it. And that was the problem with Tenet, that people were going to the cinemas and just coming out unsatisfied because they were not getting the point. They were missing the point of the film. Just you just like there's this epic final scene which I'm not going to explain obviously for spoilers, but it's very, very, very emotional. The thing is, nobody felt emotional watching it because they were always trying to figure out what happened in the previous half an hour, so you just miss so many things. Um so I think Nolan had this thing of people are dumb if they don't understand it. I'm not going to lower my standards, and it's understandable. A director chooses a path and he sticks to that path. But yeah, I think that's what happened with Tenet. He just went overboard and just spent so much on it, and it had to be all the biggest actors and the biggest names, the biggest music and the biggest everything. And then also one thing I hadn't realized how bad it was the dialogues. I understood it, but I'm thinking I understood it better because I watched it in Italian the first time. It was dubbed in Italian. And usually when films are dubbed, you can actually understand the dialogues better because there's just a new track on the first one. So it's not the actual. My battery is completely dying, so I need to wrap it up. But basically, if you're listening to it dubbed, it's not the original recording, it's just dubbed lines on top of that so you can understand better. But when I rewatched it in English, I could really understand how hard it was for the dialogues. And there was this great video on YouTube. I cannot remember the guy's name at the moment, but he basically picked all these scenes from Tenet and he was like, listen to this, and you literally cannot understand what they're saying because they're mumbling with these masks on, with these loud music going on. So already it's extremely complicated, and then you have no freaking idea what they're saying. And Nolan is just like, yeah, but people have to understand. If they don't understand it, they're dumb, and it's my masterpiece. And we're like, yeah, Chris, we get it, but people aren't all these masterminds when they go to the cinema. They even sometimes want something less complicated. But then at the same time, there are films like The Matrix, which are basically ridiculously complicated. I mean, to understand The Matrix, you would literally have to read books on, like, philosophy books to understand it. You know, like, I don't know if this is trans. I only know this in Italian. So is it Plato's Caverna di Platone, like all these references and mythical things and philosophical things and literature references, which a lot of people are not going to get. I didn't get these. I had to actually go and read again on The Matrix after that. But still, it's one of the most successful films of all time. So I don't know. I don't know if Tenet in the long run people will still appreciate it, or people just get fed up and say, "Oh, that's just too complicated." Because again, Inception, Interstellar, you could even lose 10 minutes of Interstellar, full 10 minutes. You could go to the toilet and take a full toilet break, come back, still be complicated, but unless you missed some of the most crucial moments, you're still going to get the general idea of the movie. Tenet, you miss that one line, gone, or you miss one point of the blue team and the red team and the time and what he said to the other guy, and are we inverted or not inverted, or it's too complicated. Inception, you can even give up. You're like, whatever. I still don't understand at what level of the dream we're in, but the plot is still going on. So yeah, those are my thoughts on on Tenet. And the NC, we always get back to Tenet and Twilight. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap this up because otherwise my AirPods are going to completely die. We can always do a new live stream now that I'm back into things more. And I apologize for my hair and the crazy look and everything. But yes, I will wrap it up now. See you again in 6 months, Debbie. No, it won't be 6 months. Don't worry. No, it won't even be 1 month. It will be. I will be shorter than that. Okay. So have a great night, everybody, or day, depending on which area of the world you're in. Sorry if I missed some of the last comments. I think there were. Oh, I can't. Oh, there were quite a few, but I think they were most about Tenet. So see you all soon. Have a great night. Bye, guys.